Welcome to Memorable Marketing by MediaGroup. Today we have a special episode. We're interviewing Lars Tvede, who is a professional investor and serial entrepreneur who has founded a string of companies within telecommunications, software development, property, and finance. Today we talk about his new book and we talk a lot about marketing. Stay tuned.
Marketing today is super complicated, and the way we can use technology to support us in the process is become a very sophisticated craft and science. Across everything I've done for many, many years, looking into the future has been the common theme.
Lars Tvede, thank you so much for being on our podcast. Thank you for joining us. Can you start telling a little about who you are and what your background is?
I'm an engineer and economist, and I worked, especially in my early days, quite a lot in marketing, but shifted over to entrepreneurship and finance. I've started or founded or co-founded 13 companies, most of them in tech, satellite communication, online media, etc. And also I've started some finance company. I have my own called Beluga, which has been sort of my investment engine for the last 20 years. In 2016, I co-founded a venture capital fund called Nordic Eye. Quite turbulent, but we are up around according to the latest audited numbers, about 700% for the investors who came in 2017. And the investors who came in 2016 are actually up more than 800%. But of course, in venture, you get the audited valuation, but you cannot know what the value is until everything has been sold. But it looks very good. So and then I founded a company called Supertrends, which is the purpose of that company is to have a better look into the future. So almost everything I've done is about the future, and I've been frustrated. So when you work in financial markets, you have a Bloomberg terminal, and you can just type in any query or click on any symbol, and then poof, you have on this dashboard, you have all the news, all the values, all the price changes, and so on. But if I want to type in the state of 3D printing of metal, then you end up in Google, and then it's just a jungle of different reports you can download and interviews and whatnot. So it's very, very difficult, very time consuming to navigate around and find out what's going on in innovation. I wanted to make something like a Bloomberg where you just type in, you get the state of the art. So you get all the startup companies that are working on it, how much funding they get, what is the mood when people talk about it on Twitter, what is the research, and what are the expected future milestones that will break through, and so on. So we have a big team of entrepreneurs and scientists who are experts for us, and they upload predictions about what they are doing themselves. So, for instance, somebody working with nuclear technology, nuclear power, might upload that the person expects that nuclear fusion power will work sustained, so continuously in a reactor, say in 2025. Actually, they did exactly that. Or somebody might say that hydrogen cars become economically competitive in 2028 and so on. So we have around almost 2,000 such predictions. And the experts can change the prediction, but that means that we have an aggregate timeline of the most likely future. You can just type in a query, and then you can see, for an industry or for a technology, what do the experts who work with it actually expect that will happen.
Wow. And that's in Supertrends.
Yeah.
And then you've also an author, and you've written 16 books, and your 17th book is coming out. And that is what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So what's the 17th book called, and what is it about?
Yeah, so so far we've sold the rights in Chinese, English, Korean, and Danish. And the working title for the English version is From Malthus to Mars. The Danish title is Fremtidsklar, which would be something similar to Future Fit. But the subtitle is the same, and it's about how to learn, live, and lead in an exponential world. And the point is that because of all these exponential technologies, the world is becoming more and more turbulent. So business models, business cases, societies, everything is getting like churned around by new technologies, including what we're using here, right? Which would not have worked a couple of decades ago. Even 1 decade ago, it wouldn't have been very good. So, but the technologies you and I are using right now enable us to work in a different way that we did before. And the first part of the book was written by me, so I actually made the whole draft of the first part almost 2 years ago, and then we've updated, and that's where's the world going and what are the underlying drivers behind all that change that we see. The second part is about the individual, so the person who has so many choices, but also most likely will have several careers, a lot of jobs, live many places. What does that mean for how you need to navigate your own life, so manage yourself? Just we saw a study, a prediction for General Z, the Zoomers. So it's said something like that they would, on average, have 16 different jobs in 6 different careers and living 12 different places, something like that. And so if you go 2 or 3 generations back, you would grow up on your parents' farm, and then you would take over the farm, or you marry into somebody else's farm, probably your neighbor's son or daughter. And I mean, not that many choices. And what happens is, when we have so many choices, that some people absolutely thrive. You and I are probably in that category. A lot of people get lost, though. And it's like too much of a good thing can be a bad thing if you can't manage it, like food. And so so we go a lot into this and into growth mindset, about being values driven, locus of control, all the rest of it. And then in the third part, we go into what can companies do. And this is my co-author who was kind of the lead on that. So he has been a McKinsey consultant for 10 years on leadership changes, and written 2 books. His second book, called Return on Ambition, has won a very prestigious book award in the US. So he has these 10 things that you need to consider. And I hate that books that say, we are now going into the 4th industrial revolution, and then like portrays like everything will change and everything will be completely different. And if you don't change, you will die, and so on. And the truth is always that, Swiss watchmakers are not going into the 4th revolution. They would kill them if they tried. They should stay with traditional old-fashioned watchmaking, so on. So it's only thing to consider. But that's for instance, instead of setting goals, you set direction. Also be value driven as a company. So say, what is the mission? What is the purpose of that we have the company, and something about how you learn and distribute or share knowledge and so on.
Okay. And so you wrote the first part. Do you want to talk more details about that?
Yeah, of course, it's quite comprehensive, but there are some. It goes into a number of technological phenomena. Of course, the biggest story is that everything gets digital, and we just, actually, in the beginning, we do the history of creativity and innovation, and we show that there was this explosion in human creativity around 1450. And then after that point, we saw an incredible explosion in the wealth in the world. But then in 1798, there was this priest who was also kind of an economist of his day, called Thomas Malthus, and he said, this will end in a disaster because we cannot increase food production as quickly as the world population growth. So he could see everybody got 4, 5, 6 children. So the world population was growing exponential. There was no way you could match that. So he predicted global famine. And so this is a Malthusian economy. And what happened was that his timing was so bad because the Industrial Revolution started almost the moment he had written the last the last sentence in his book, and the Industrial Revolution just meant that we were able to feed people better and give them much higher standard of living. So we saw this continued exponential growth in the living standard, at the same time as we had growth in population numbers. And now in the world, we have the lowest proportion of famine ever. And we have, for the first time in the 200,000-300,000 years human history, more people who are obese than are undernourished. But then there was a big shift around 1980. And that was the beginning of the precision economy. And very often people talk about the digital economy, and that's a big part of it. But it's also the biochemical revolution, where you have precision handling of life. You start to be able to manipulate genes and understand genes and so on. And there are a few other elements to the precision economy. For instance, 3D printing is a very, very precise way of producing, and other things. But it's like 99% about IT and biochemistry. And that made a lot of changes that we can see in macroeconomics. So, for instance, there's a book called More from Less, which goes mainly with an American perspective. It just shows how the US has been able to continue to increase its GDP per capita. It did before 1980, and it continued to do that after 1980. But the consumption of resources just flatlined. So the consumption of fertilizer, water, metals, etc., most of it, with the exception of energy, most of it flatlined, and that is because we can do things far more precisely. For instance, when you and I are talking right now, there's not a copper wire between us. That would have been where you're in St. Gallen.
No, we're in Brisbane, Australia, and you're in Switzerland, right? Yeah.
That would be one hell of a copper line. No. Yeah, we transmit through thin air. No copper line. Up to a satellite, probably 2 satellites, I guess. Maybe up and down a couple of times. And the satellites are small, right? So this is an example of how we can achieve more with less. And then we are right now, and have for some time, been moving into like what I call the fourth phase of the economy, which is the experience economy. So I am surrounded by more and more people who do not want any more material goods. There's a term for that. It's called enoughism. That for example, I have one daughter who she wants to own as little as possible, and it's not a philosophical thing. She just wants to enjoy herself, travel, have experiences, go to restaurants, theaters, concerts, and so on. But she just thinks it's so annoying to have things. So she'd rather rent a car than own a car. My other daughter is a little bit different, I have to say. So the point here is that, okay, so now I described 4 different stages of economy. I would argue that 15% of the world population lives in the Malthusian economy still, mainly in Africa, where population numbers are still growing, but they are not capable of feeding themselves, so they depend on help. The industrial economy is still very much alive, and probably stay alive forever. Electric cars, windmills, and so on. This is industrial. But in terms of business development and profits, we can see that the vast majority of good business over the last 20 years have been in the precision economy. In the old days, you had the Seven Sisters, which were incredibly valuable oil companies. Now you have the new Seven Sisters, but they're incredible, important, profitable data companies. If I should listen to what I just said, I should probably make the prediction that 20 years from now, the seven most valuable companies in the world are experience companies. Not sure about that, but if you look at, for instance, Netflix is an experience company. Isn't Apple? I mean, of course, it's a tech company, but it doesn't feel like for the user. It doesn't feel like a tech company. It's the content. So I would say that's also very much an experience company. And this is something that when we operate in marketing, we have to think about, give it a thought at least. Are we an industrial company, a precision economy company, or are we doing storytelling in the experience company, or which combination do we have? And we also, in the public debate about different things, we also run into this. So take energy. Energy is a big theme right now. Because right now we don't have enough. So that is actually industrial economy that just came back, and just it had been ignored for a while. So now we don't have enough energy. But so you have in lots of places like in Denmark, Australia, Switzerland, where I am right now, you have these people who say, who say we should only have organic food and should be these small farms that have 5 chicken, a pig that is in a pigsty with mud and so on. And then you have, so this is a storytelling economy, the experience economy. And then you have these other people that are some of our experts on super trends, who say, no, the future of food production is that we manipulate cells at the genetic level, and then we can grow these cells in steel tanks, and or we manipulate microorganisms, and then they excrete something that it becomes part of food in what you call precision fermentation. And if we do that, and then your plants grow in vertical farming, so they can grow in abandoned mines and so on. Never see the sun; they'll get the light from LED. So the people from the precision economy, they would say, if we do like we say, we can feed the world with 0.2% of the world's surface, which means that we can free up almost all farmland in the world for free nature. That's a beautiful solution, right? And they would say to the people with the organic food, if we go your way, we actually need 25% more land, more farmland than we have now, which means that we have to destroy nature so you can have your good story. And this is something that it's very interesting to question what happens if we go your way all the way. So yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm not an economist, but isn't that what economy and capitalism is at its heart? That all these different trends are competing against each other. Like, for instance, when I grew up, I was told if everyone in the world wanted to have toilet paper, there would be no more trees left. And now I'm a middle-aged man, and we still have trees, right? And everybody has toilet paper. So, from my point of view, and again, I'm not an economist, but money has a way of flowing into where there's opportunity. So everybody thinks like in 5 years and 10 years, everything's going to be very static. But because of economy and the way money flows, some things will counter that. Big oil prices, okay, well, then we invest in sustainable energy. If the oil price is very, very low, well, we're not going to invest so much sustainable energy. Is that not correct? Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, that is correct. And also, money doesn't necessarily flow to what delivers most basic services for the dollar, because so many people want things that are inefficient also. And that's mainly the experience economy. So I mentioned Swiss watches earlier. I mean, what is more inefficient than a Swiss watch? I mean, you pay. Sorry, I'll lose my work permit here, but I actually love Swiss watches. But I also love steam locomotives. But if you just want to know what the time is, I mean, it's on your phone, which you've got anyway, and it's likely to be more reliable. So why would you pay $20,000 or Swiss francs or euro? It's a dollar and Swiss francs. A euro is pretty much the same for the first time ever. For a watch, because you like it. Why do you want a very noisy car? Because you like it. So so a part of the money flows into these things that are clearly in the experience economy, and that proportion of the world's money that goes into experiences rather than just basic features, that would grow and grow.
Okay. When you discuss companies and society, do you also talk about or where trends are going and where marketing and companies are going?
Yeah, so we do a great effort to make the connection between technologies and how they will impact lifestyles, societies as a whole, organization forms, and also marketing. And the marketing part is something that I find super interesting because I have also a marketing background. And there's actually we mentioned a number of phenomena, but then at one point I was writing while I was listening to music on Spotify, and then I just thought, actually, everything we say here is done by Spotify. Let's make a chapter simply about how Spotify does this, and it's quite interesting. So first of all, when something becomes digital, which is this big theme, you get micro objects. So, for instance, I needed a logo. In the old days, I would go to a marketing agency and maybe I'd talk with 3 different marketing agencies. I would choose one. Then 3 months later or 2 weeks later, I'd go to a meeting. They would, on cardboards, they would show me 3 different logos. Now you go on 99 designs, and within no time you have it in a iterative process. I got about 300 suggestions for logos from people all over the world, and I got a really super great logo for about $1,000. And that is an example of how work that gets divided into these micro objects, because each of these people they sit all day and make logo proposals for many different prospects. So in music, I was talking about Spotify. So in music, in the old days, I would go to a shop and I would buy an LP. And sometimes because there was one great song on it, but I had to buy
The whole damn album.
bloody LP, right? But then we got iTunes, and then you could buy only that song. And then you got Spotify, so now you buy a flow of songs. But the next natural step is that I can remove an instrument or I can add an instrument. Let's say that there's a very good song, but I think it should have trumpet layer. So we know from new AI software like DALL-E, for instance, that it's so good now that you could easily say that I have a song, and then I say I'd like to change the drumming to a style of Buddy Rich or something with congas, and then please add some trumpets and a female chorus, perhaps. And then it could do that. And then can you make something that sounds like Shine On Your Crazy Diamond by Pink Floyd, but make it twice as long? Or something like that. So then we have completely disaggregated the product now. So we actually going in and manipulating at the very smallest level, just like we do with IT and just like we do with genetics. So this is in any case. So Spotify, of course, they've taken gone from the album to the single songs. Then they offer it on an open platform, and on the open platform you can share playlists. So I can have friends and they do playlists for something, and then they share with me and I can add to them and so on. And then you have ratings. You have it. Spotify has ratings, so I rate what I like. And people rate Spotify in general in the App Store. But we rate. And the rating, of course, makes markets far more efficient, both when I rate what I get, but also when we rate more general services or are being rated. For instance, in Uber and similar companies, you rate the driver, but the driver also rates you, which is pretty. I mean, they took it pretty far right from the start, which removes a whole lot of risk and problems with this. Then there's a transition to as a service. so X as a service, it's sometimes called. But if you think about it, back in the days, back in the farm, our grandparents, right? So they would probably carry water in a bucket, at least in some farmhouses. I've even tried that. If they wanted, power, energy, they would carry in wood, or they would carry in coal or something like that. I've done that for my grandmother, carrying coal into her cellar and out of her cellar. If they to communicate, they would carry in a letter or carry in a newspaper. Now you just press a button. You got power as a service. It's electricity. You got water as a service. It's on tap water. You got communication as a service via the internet, etc. So what happens now is that more and more companies have figured out and will continue to figure out that they can transition into as a service business model. And some of them, they start with, we sell our product and then we have an add-on service. Some of them, they go so far that you buy the service and then we have add-on products. So the products kind of become the afterthought. And we argue in the book that this is just something every company, which is not Spotify, who've already done it, but every company should just consider, are there anything that we sell like ad hoc that we could change into as a service? And I know in many cases, the answer is no. Rolex as a service wouldn't work, I guess. So, but it's worth thinking about. Then the use of artificial intelligence. It's been so amazing. I've been following artificial intelligence for 30 years now, and we had all these AI winters where people got excited and then the stuff didn't work. And then it started working, what was it, like 6-7 years ago, it really started working because of a number of tech breakthroughs. But the latest, where you can joke, I mentioned DALL-E and similar products. I am a test user of DALL-E, and I write, show me two children who are holding each other's hands approaching a maze. And then within 30 seconds, it come up with 4 different things. Or I can say, show me a house, show me the Eiffel Tower with a pink elephant standing below, but it should look like it's painted in the style of Van Gogh. 30 seconds, I've got it, right? So here you have artificial intelligence that can do music, that can do illustrations, and so on. I'd say if you are a graphic designer, you better be really quick at learning how to use this, because the other guys, the other people will. Then there's automation that a number of processes simply happen in the background, often very, very technical, but the user doesn't see it. Disintermediation is also a consequence of digitalization, and that means that we cut out the middleman, because computers can do what the middleman did. So, so you go in simply. For instance, one of my daughters, the one who doesn't want to own many material things.
Minimalist.
Yeah, minimalist. So she buys muesli online, on my muesli. And instead of going to a shop, she just goes in and then she types in what combination of stuff she wants in the muesli, and then comes with a mail. So this is disintermediation that follows from digitalization, and there's an enormous range of great business models in being the one who does that.
So you mentioned before that Rolexes cannot be a service, but isn't that what some of the car companies are doing, where you pay a monthly subscription and then you can change cars like 2 or 3 times a month? So you can have something for the weekend, something for the work, and something to impress for a big event or something like that. So you could, I guess you could pay a lot of money every month to Rolex, and you could have 1 or 2 watches on loan. I don't know, just an idea.
I can see that probably. My guess is that people wouldn't want that for Rolexes, but I might be wrong. Challenge.
But maybe somebody wants a fancy Rolex for the wedding, and then wants something else for a club, or I don't know. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but you are right. There are some people for cars, and in any case, transport as a service. When you say cars as a service, you're thinking about, you have access to these cars from the experience economy, so cool cars. So that's one probably fairly marginal as a service, model in the car business, but transport as a service where you just need to go from A to B, and you just with an app can unlock a car and drive it, or later that with automatic cars it just comes to you. That would be enormous. Network effects is also a very big thing, and there's an expression called the marketing audit. Yeah, so when you do, just like you could do a legal audit, or you could do a financial audit, you can also do a marketing audit. And marketing audit is that you go through, you use a number of standard marketing tools like the Boston Consulting Group model, and different tools, and then you go through exercise to see if everything is in this proper way. But and I wrote a book about this around year 2000, and then I just thought that was a time when network effects really, really were beginning to become important. And I just think now that in any organization, especially or any commercial company at least, you should really do what I would call a network effect audit. To go through everything you do and think about, is there anything we do where we can create a network effect? Because it creates so much value, and it's also a kind of protective layer against competition. So this is very important.
Can you elaborate on the network effect? So a traditional company or any company, how would they go in and use this network effect, and how would that affect them, and how would that affect their customers? Can you elaborate on that?
We write about network effects in a book, in the book, and they come in the different kinds of network effects. But you can have, of course, you can have like Spotify. You have a network effect where you have many network effects in Spotify, but you have one that because Spotify have many users, it attract many musicians, and because it has many musicians, it attracts many users. So that's like a two-sided network effect. But also because you can share because your friends use it, and then you can share a playlist with your friends. So that's another network effect, and so on. So many companies have already some network effects that make them kind of solid and viable. But you can think about, for instance, if you're a startup, it's very the evil thing about network effects is that it can be very difficult to get it started sometimes. But then you can hook up to somebody else's network effect. So you can just be embedded in something that somebody else does, and then you piggyback on their network effect. And then when you're big enough, then suddenly you have your own base, and then you kind of begin to take control of that. So we go into this, and then two more things. As I said, a segment of one. Now I mentioned my daughter's my muesli. In using Spotify, I am a segment of one. I am pretty sure nobody else has exactly the same playlist as I have. And so you have millions of users who probably like 99% have completely individualized playlists. And this is what computers can do for us, and it can do it at very close to zero cost. And the last thing is that the last thing is driven by a number of these previous effects. And this is that there's a shift in marketing from the vendor pull psychology, where you have or vendor push. So a vendor goes out and try to promote, let's say, a song to you, to a client pool. So it delivers it delivers a response to what I've done. So in Spotify, for instance, if I've been it tracks what I've been doing, and then it figures out automatically if Lars likes this, then Lars probably also likes that. So I'm the boss. I'm the boss. I don't need any promotion. I don't want any promotion. I want an anonymous computer figuring out if I like this, I might also like that. But it comes up as an extension of my existing playlists.
And that's all same with YouTube. You go in and you search for something, and suddenly you get all these, and you go down a rabbit hole because it keeps suggesting, it keeps coming up with new things you can learn and research about. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So I think it's important to always think about technology in the context of so technology is very often experience economy or precision economy. Sometimes it's industrial economy, but think about it in the terms of the experience economy, and think about it in terms of marketing strategies. Which marketing strategies does this enable? And I mentioned Uber that came out with a double-sided rating. That was for I mean that was very good thinking. I think Elon Musk, when he comes out with battery-driven cars, not only battery-driven cars, but there's AI, and every car teaches every other car something about driving and so on. And he does this. He did disintermediation from the start. He was not, you couldn't buy it in the normal distribution network. You configure it and buy it online, so on. So he did out. He used all the tricks, if I can call it that, from modern marketing in one go to launch his company. And of course, the other ones are learning now, and he'll get a run for his money now. But this is something that when a company is tech first, born digital, and starting from scratch, very often they get this right much better than the incumbents.
Yeah, I mean, because speaking of Tesla, Elon Musk, there's always the next car. This is going to be a Tesla killer. This is going to be a Tesla killer. And this is going to be a Tesla killer. But so far, he's still ahead of the pack when it comes to maybe not build quality, maybe not design, but certainly battery optimization and knowledge of the road, and getting a lot of cars out there. But the other ones are coming for him now, as you said. So Lars, earlier you said that DALL-E, this artificial intelligence, this program that can do graphic designs and music, and going down where you ask it to create anything and it will. Is that going to come in to the marketing space where the computer, artificial intelligence, the man versus machine will come in and take over, so much so that marketing companies are not needed in the future? Where a CEO or owner of a company can just go in and type everything in a computer and off it goes, and there goes the campaigns.
It's a super good question. I'll answer this way first. That there's a lot of discussion, and we actually mentioned that in the book. But there's a lot of discussion about, people talk about man against machine, and with a kind of indication that machine wins in the end, even in chess, even in Go, the far more complicated games on. Turns out, though, that in so many cases, the real winner is the centaur. Do you know what is meant by that, centaur? So it's this adventure animal which is half human, half horse, but it's an expression that is used for the machine supported man. So somebody, for instance, let's say that a doctor is talking with a patient, but has AI listening in. And then when the doctor says, I think what we have here is this and that, then the AI might sort of gently whisper in her ear, actually, I think I think the patient has something else. Ask about that. But the patient would not feel comfortably talking with a computer. Likes to talk with a doctor, but a doctor who's aided by a computer works better. And we have so many possibilities in marketing today of creating network effects, of making using freelancers to support us, using artificial intelligence to do a number of things, engaging and so on. So when I was young, I thought that marketing as a discipline was as complicated as psychology. And this is my nice way of saying that it wasn't that difficult. It was. It wasn't. I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know how many people I just insulted here, but I mean, what is complicated? Math is bloody complicated. Physics is complicated. Chemistry is. But anybody can understand psychology, and of course, there are, some psychologists are better than others, and some marketing people are better than us. But marketing today is super complicated. And the way we can use technology support us in the process it's become a very sophisticated craft and science. You can make DAOs, which are digital automated organizations. Like Bitcoin is a DAO. You can create all these different viral effects. You can engage people in so many ways. You can automate. You can have rating services and so on. So somebody needs to understand this, and then some of the actual deliverables are probably handmade by people, but then perhaps they should all be outsourced to somebody in Bangladesh or whatever. But more and more will be done by computers, and absolutely splendid. When I mentioned DAL-E earlier, Cosmopolitan magazine, they made a spectacularly beautiful, cool front page cover image using DALL-E. And so somebody needs to know how to use this software and where it fits in and where it doesn't fit in. So I think the role for the marketing agency is not disappearing. It's if anything probably growing, but the demands for the skills are going up. That is my question to this. But then when we talk about marketing, people also need to think about what the part that they have to do themselves. So when I was early in my career, sometimes we had to do a little promotion video, and then somebody from a production company came, and then they would put powder in my face to cover my red nose and so on. But and then somebody would script what I had to say, and then I would be like, oh, yeah, blah blah, and I would say exactly, and it wasn't good. And I still see sometimes the CEO of some family-owned company sitting there, trying to come with some kind of mission statement and so on. What works best is something that is spontaneous, authentic. In music, you would call it like indie music, and that you just have a selfie stick or you just put your computer in. Sometimes I've recorded where I have it in the car. Not even know. I don't know if some of that is illegal, but so you're driving you're driving your car while you're sometimes looking at the camera, but you're looking around and talking. That works really well. Once I interviewed my daughter, who's an entrepreneur, while we were sitting in a car, and it got so many hits. Um, what works really well is when you stumble, when you make mistakes. You say something stupid, you realize it, you laugh, you correct it, you get twice as many viewers, and it's not bad. It's good.
Well, you're human. It shows you're human.
You interrupt yourself because you suddenly had a new line of thought that people like that. And so I found out randomly a couple of tricks. First of all, I don't know if it's still like that, but Facebook has had at least an algorithm where if you had high, if a video was more than 3 minutes and you had high viewership in the first minute, then they would boost it because they're competing against YouTube. So I've found out the way to get high viewership is to walk through an interesting landscape, typically outdoors or indoors, because you're walking. Let's say you're filming yourself in wide angle. You're walking around some corners, bending down, and so on. If I do that, people watch it. They I hope they listen to what I say, but they watch it because it's what happens now. It's interesting. Oh, he's bending down. He's going under this. So if you can have some spiel going on, then you have retention, and then it get boosted. So either make it like less than a minute or a bit more than 3 minutes, like that. And something surprising happened. For instance, let's say if I should do a video now where I introduce a book, an efficient way to do it would be that I walk through my home, around the corners, filming myself, or somebody walks behind with a mobile phone filming. But then would be super cool that when I mention the book, an arm comes out from around the corner with a book, and I just pick it up, right? And people say, "Ooh, that was fun. That was a fun detail." So it's these kind of things that one have to do, and if you're a good storyteller in that way, that you just make it entertaining, then it's good. And you have to think about, in the early days of the internet, people were thinking, "What is the internet?" And then I once read a story that somebody wrote, "Now I finally figured out what it is. It's a catalog." And, but it's not a catalog, because nobody wants commercials. I mean, if you put something on LinkedIn, which is simply a promotion for your company, you get 2 likes, one from your spouse and one from your mother. So you have to give people something that is interesting to them.
Yeah, give something of value.
Yeah, something of value, and then indirectly, then they notice it came from you or your company, and then they say, I better follow these guys or this person or whatever. And then slowly you get closer and closer to people. But there's still people who think of it as a catalog. It's not.
Lars, can you give us an example of a marketing campaign you did in the past that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, when we launched, I did a book called Entrepreneur with a co-author, and it's about, it's the subtitle is What We Learned from Starting 30 Companies. And then he had a friend in UK who was a small publisher, but efficient publisher and writer. And he said, "You need to make it a bestseller before it's before it's been launched." And I was like, "How can you make your book a bestseller before it's launched?" And he said, "Oh, that's
Pre-orders.
yeah, exactly. 2 weeks before the book comes out, you start a marketing campaign for it." And it's, and then we use all these methods, unofficial, funny things. And then every time you just a link to one place where you can pre-order it, not 15 places, one place. Choose one place, and then a lot of people hopefully will pre-order that place. And then that place, so it's an online bookshop, they have a weekly bestseller list, and if it goes well, it becomes a bestseller. Then you change your communication and say that it is now a bestseller because of pre-orders. Then the bookshops see that, and then they order more than they had planned because it's a bestseller. And then they, because it's a bestseller, they put it, at the best displays and so on, because they promote most what is already selling best. Put it in the window, put it by the checkout counter, and so on. And that makes it a bestseller on the other sides also. So that was kind of a self-fulfilling process.
I see. What's most important in marketing, the story or the numbers?
I think it's very difficult to give a single answer to that, but if you kind of force me, then I'd say the story, because if you have people who are really hooked on what you do, then they become ambassadors for you, and then they will be an extension of your marketing that you don't directly see, but they talk about how much they like what you do, and that's more efficient than having a very big numbers, I think. But it's the answer is kind of an indication, not a hard science.
You've been in marketing for quite some time, or previously you were in marketing. What was 3 things you wish you knew before you started in marketing?
The first one is how important it is to include network effects in what you do. So really think it through, and there are many different strategies for creating network effects. So think about if you want a network effect in some of what you do, but you can't figure out how to get there. Go through the different strategies that exist, and then think of one that might work for you. The second thing is to produce a lot of content yourself in a genuine way, and use your phone. And the third one is probably never try to sell your product. There's a saying in sales that you should never show your product before you sold it. That means find out what people need, and then once you know what they need, then you can show the product. So don't push products. Find demands, uncover demands, and then you do this process of closing. Let's say you come into a car shop, and I'm the salesman, and then I say hi, and say I'm looking. You say I'm looking for a car, and I say, we have a nice new one here. Shall we go and look at that? That would be so stupid. Then I'm showing the product before I know anything about you. So no, instead, do you drink tea? So you don't drink coffee. Do you drink tea, or can I offer you a glass of water? So I offer you a glass of water, or tea, or beer, whatever. We sit down, and then I say, have you thought about, what will you use it for? Well, I'm going for work, but also I have two kids and a dog, and we go to the forest, and when we come back, the dog's really dirty. Okay, so there needs to be for this. And so, yeah, I ask 10, 15 questions, and I know exactly what kind of car you need. And then you say, I think I have the car that does everything you need. Let's go. It's down in the cellar, and I go down in the cellar, and there it is, the car you need. So that's something I fortunately I learned it fairly early in my life, but not early enough.
What's your 5-year vision, Lars?
For the world or for myself?
Your vision.
I across everything I've done for many years, looking into the future has been the common theme, and I want to become better at looking into the future, both the way I do it personally, and the way I use technology for it. I love living in the mountains in the winter. I've worked from where I am the last 22 years. So I'll still live in the mountains in the winter, ski a couple of hours every day when the weather's for it. Probably I like to be sailing in the summer. I'll probably do a lot of that. And then be with the people that are really close to me. And spend as little time as possible on commuting for meetings.
Commuting is soul crunching. What keeps you up at night?
This is where I should say your girlfriend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes, what keeps me worried for the world around me is negativity. That so many people think that the world is getting worse, even though there's every indication that it's getting better and better. Not every single year. Like 2022 is not a good year with the Putin war, but the world will be far better off 10 years from now than it is now. And I think it's a pity that a lot of children have the opposite impression. There's a lot of psychological studies that show that if you are negative, then you'll be inefficient and unhappy. And why should we give our children that when it's not even true? I'm perpetually worried about what is called over-institutionalization. It's a word I like to use in speeches simply because people haven't said it before, they can't say it. So I'm just looking forward to so I say, any questions? And then somebody says, you talked about and I enjoy it. So over-institutionalization is something that happens in any society, any organization, where things get more and more complicated, and in the end, it grinds to a halt. So these organizations or societies, like tractor pull, if you know this, tractor is pulling some kind of trolley, which carries more and more weight until the tractor can't pull anymore. That happens to societies, and then they go, and it happens to many companies, and then they also go. And so this is something that I'm very concerned about in general.
Got it. Lars, it's been absolutely a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for taking your time, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure for me as well. So if you want to do it another time, game.
Thank you.